Well, first let me say, Jeremy, I appreciate your work on the Capitol Hill apartments. I think that was a great moment. I think both of us have had times when we've worked pretty hard to lower the cost of government, lower taxes. I personally worked very hard to push all the tax cuts through the House, and we pushed a lot of tax cuts through the House last session. And regrettably, they all got entangled in the state Senate. And that's really part of my inspiration to run for the state Senate. But I remember a week ago when I was speaking with Jeremy, we had a joint appearance at a villa, and again, you stood up and said, you know, if you will check our records, there really are differences. And what you need to do, if I recall correctly, what you need to do is vote for the person who's in tune with Avila values. What I'd like to do is talk a little bit about Avila values. When you were in the state legislature, you voted to expand criminal rights. You voted to give universal voting to all felons after they served their sentence. Now, I tend to think that that is not in tune with Avila values. I think that that's dangerous, and I think that felons ought to follow the traditional rule of voting as a privilege after they've been found guilty, and I think that they ought to follow the traditional role of requesting their voting privileges. I don't think voting is a right for felons. You talked about Avila values. I do not think that wasteful spending is an Avila value. When you were in the legislature, you voted to change our voting rules. We used to have one combined primary election. You were a leader in the attempt to split it up into two elections so that we had a primary election for the president and a primary election for everyone else. As far as I can tell, this accomplished nothing except wasting a couple $1 million of taxpayers' money. I understand the attempt was to bring in a lot of journalists and draw a lot of journalistic attention to Arkansas. I think it was a failure. Most members of the House agree with me on that. That's why we voted to push it back and combine it, save the taxpayers a couple $1 million worth of money. I don't think waste in government is an Avila value. Finally, when you were in the state legislature, you worked to pass a bill that would send $20,000 over to the board of directors of an educational company, particularly to send $20,000 to an educational company where you're a member of the board of directors. And a couple of months later, you accepted a job and a paycheck from that very same company. The Democrat Gazette called that a conflict of interest. I don't think a conflict of interest is part of Avila values. Let me tell you what my Avila values are. My Avila values, I've represented that area for the last 4 years. Avila values have a lot to do with Second Amendment rights. They have to do with preserving property rights. They have to do with lower taxes. They have to do with holding back the growth of government. They have to do with living in a secure way where you're not threatened by the growth of government. And they have to do with preserving our traditional family. Those are what Avila values are all about. And I think that those are some clear differences between the two of us. There's 52 seconds left. I'm sure all of you will be pleased to hear if I'm going to take a break.